There's a lot of information in it. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hand you over to Seamus. Cheers. I'm going to dim the lights.
I hope I'm talking loud enough for everyone in the back there and all the rest of it, and none of the writing's too small. That's the website, and basically the things that I was always fascinated by and that it focuses on are Townlands, maps and directories. So that's what you see when you log on. Now it should be sort of clear how to get around it, but just to give a sort of an overview, that bit there is the most commonly used things. They're the ones I find myself using the most, and they're also the new options. So the most recent thing I added was milestones in South County Dublin. There's pictures and maps and all that in there. I can't go into everything, we'll be here all day. And the things before that were for browsing parishes, and so there's a mix of things in there that don't necessarily fit together. The other things are down there, and each of those expand. So you click on historic maps and it expands and shows you all the historic maps. There's an example on the screen. There's links to 2 blogs. I think the best Irish ones is Claire Santry's Irish Genealogy News, and there's John Grennam's. He posts about once a week. Claire posts almost every day. On the right hand side there's the articles, the WordPress articles, if you want to be technical. And the most recent 5 appear on there. I think it's 5. The most recent ones with a little summary. You can actually read the rest of them by clicking a link at the bottom, which has gone off the end of the screen there. You'll see continue reading. Oh no, it's below that again. But you see a link at the end, and it shows you the whole list of articles going way back to whenever I set that up. That's what happens when you expand one of the sections on the menu. So there I've hit directories and all the directory options come up. Similarly with the maps, you hit the maps, it'll expand. There is, in there's a piece of wording that says click there to see the rest of the articles. Believe me, it is. I can see it. That's how you get to the rest of the WordPress articles. It's underneath that, sorry, I'll come back. They're the sections that there are. So featured are the things you use all the time: historic maps, self-explanatory, directories, things to do with parishes, and things to do with townlands and places. And then there's a big section at the end, which is anything else. They sort of start interacting after that. So there's bits of maps with townlands and maps with parishes, and it gets a little bit cross-linked then. The WordPress articles, the recent ones that are at the top, you click at the end for the main list, and they're sorted by date and category, and there's a search function. So you can hit Bray or Dublin or maps or townlands, and the articles with that will come up. There's also a search option at the bottom of the page, along with my email address. There's a search option, and this is the only place you might see advertising, because Google decide to do it. That's how they're paying for the search. And it's actually quite good. I, in an attempt to demonstrate it, tried to type Donnybrook and got it wrong, and did Donnydruck. And yet it still found the correct showing results for Donnybrook. Based on what's already on my site and where I'm located, it guessed that was a typo, and searched for all the articles on my page that had Donnybrook in it. Now, you might see ads on there. I have no idea what they look like because I have an ad blocker. The Townland Index is where a lot of this stuff started off. I want to sit on here. It's the primary index of townlands and their associated land divisions created during the primary valuation and OS mapping, so 1840s, 1850s. And that's the full title of the book that all that is based on. General Alphabetical Index to the towns and townlands, parishes and baronies of Ireland. And the divisions were used in the 1851 census, but the book was published in 1861. I suspect probably in preparation for the 1861 census, because it's handy to know where everything has been defined as being, where this Townland is in this civil parish or this barony. And the publisher was Alexander Thom, who shows up again in our directories. That's what the front of the page of the book looks like. That's actually Census of Ireland is the caption. And there's all the information. You can actually download this or see this online. I'll show you a link later on. Oh, sorry, there's two other things I should mention that I should have said at the beginning. The first is the website is designed for desktop. There's only limited functions on small phones. With phones getting bigger, that might change. There is one option that I will show that is only available on mobile for obvious reasons. And the other thing is all the external links I posted in a blog post. So you'll be able to look, it's ready to go. All I have to do is hit publish, which I'll do when I get home. So you'll be able to see links to all the pages of mine and links to all the external pages that I'm describing. You don't have to copy them all down. Some of them are ridiculously long anyway, you'd never do it. Oh, sorry, that's where the Townland, did I skip one? No, that's the first page of the Townland Index. That's the actual details all the way through. So you have Townland or town, you'll see there's Townlands there, there's Abbeydorney, and you see there's no size. All the other ones have area, all down there. Your county, barony, parish, and poor law union. There's also references to the 1851 census, which unfortunately are no use anymore. And there's also at the bottom of the page references to townlands that have chunks of water in them, you know, lakes and bogs and things like that that aren't usable. That was the original page, but the original transcript was done by a guy called John Broderick Sr. And his nickname, Aganam, was Sean Ruitt. And he lived in, well, he died in Massachusetts, I don't know where he lived. And that was what the page looked like. It used to be hosted on a site called Sean Ruitt, which has been taken over by somebody else. And it's now on the core, and he's the administrator. And it was pretty basic search. It was very well used when it came out first. I think it came out about 2008, 2009, something like that. I spotted errors in this very early on. That was the first one. I don't know if that was some sort of Freudian slip or a typo or a joke. But there was a town called Lust in North County Dublin. I happen to have relatives in North County Dublin, so it was an area that kept cropping up for me. So I spotted that and went looking for other ones. That's the sort of thing you see. There was double letters. That was the first thing you see. So Luch Shinny instead of Rock Shinny, 2 U's in Drumskee, 2 H's in Raheen Ballandoni, things like that. And I started making notes of these errors. Once I got it into a database, I started looking for other errors by checking for where poor law unions were and where baronies were. And you see things like that. Fresh fraud instead of fresh ford. And this one, it's obviously 2 townlands mixed up, Shangana Beg Moor instead of Shangana Beg or more. And there's Townland in Clare, poor law union, and Escorty. It's obviously rubbish, it should be Ennis. So there was probably some sort of, he looked, when he was transcribing it, he looked at the one above or the one below, or it was an auto-suggest, or well, I'm not too sure that was around then. And there's one at the end there, Latin Fasci, Castle Blaney, spelled wrong. Which is kind of innocent in itself, but if you were doing show me all the townlands in Castle Blaney, that wouldn't show up. There's another kind of error that's much less common. That's Townland Cool in Tyrone, Dungannon Middle, Dungarvan. That's in the original book, instead of Dungannon. So there were mistakes made in the original book as well. Anyway, all these are fixed. About 300 corrections in all. Some of them were in batches, so the number's a bit awkward to figure out. Early corrections were passed back to a guy called, one of his sons, one of this John Broderick's sons, called Timothy, who lives in Oregon. And they were incorporated into the original Sean Ruitt database, but they're not all incorporated into it. Sorry, I have approval from him for the website and the data as long as I pass back corrections to him. There are 5 options. And I haven't taken any of them down. That's the original one. I haven't taken any of them down because they can each attack a problem in a different way. So they're probably all going to stay, and stay in the order they are, because people link to them and things, so I probably confuse things. That's the basic one. And, sorry, that's probably the most useful column. That's the type of search. You can do a starts with, contains, ends with, and then there's an option that doesn't appear in many of the others, soundex and metaphone. They're both variations of sounds like. And see how it works. I just typed in Kingstone. Say I was reading, I wasn't from Ireland, and I was reading a obituary or something, and it wasn't very clear, or there was typed wrong, and it's found everything that sounds like Kingstone. So there's Kingston, Kingstown, and there's some others there that it thinks sound like it. The sounds like functions don't work particularly well for words of Irish origin. There might be a sound deck that does, but I haven't found it yet. But they're worth a try. You can also filter by any of these: county, poor law, union, barony, civil parish, and change the sort order. These cascade, so if you hit Dublin, these three update. So if you hit Dublin, you'll only get Balrother, Rathdown, Dublin North, Dublin South, Naas, Selbridge in poor law unions, and all the baronies in Dublin, and all the civil parishes in Dublin. So you can narrow down the search to different degrees. That's the other type. One of the other types, sorry, it's Explorer. So you have all your counties down here, and you can pick, they're the poor law unions in Dublin, they're the baronies in Dublin, and down at the end there's a big list going beyond the bottom of the screen of civil parishes. And to see what that actually does, I've scroll all the way down and hit Monkstown. And you see all the towns and townlands that are in Monkstown, civil parish, county of Dublin, and the area. It tries to add them up. That can sometimes be wrong, because you'll see there this also known as, and they can appear twice. So there's no examples in this one, but sometimes you see like Sea Point, Temple Hill, and the Temple Hill would appear as well. They duplicate the entries, so you can't always rely on the total, but it's an approximation. The fifth type of search is for any type of place name. So it's for civil parish, barony, poor law union, or parish. So I've done includes SART. You can wildcard beginning and end, or anywhere in between. And you see it's found 6 civil parishes called Dysart. And when you click on that, they all come up and it shows you where they are. So you see we've selected Dysart, and it's a civil parish, and there are the baronies involved, poor law unions involved, and counties involved. And similarly you could do that with any of the other civil parish variations or townlands. This is the one I use the most. This is the new Townland Explorer, and it's going to be stuck with the name new forever probably. So again, repeating the same type of search. I've done King star T star, and I haven't selected a county or anything else. And it groups them in the same way as the Explorer, but it shows all the matches as well. So you can see with 3 different baronies represented, or sorry, 3 different poor law unions represented in Dublin. We've 3 different baronies, and we've a whole load of civil parishes. And these are all the occurrences of things with King and a T in them. So if you were reading like from a birth cert or something, and you weren't sure what exactly the record was, you can wildcard and figure it out from these. Probably you'd use the poor law union for that. Similarly, you can put in, you can just select a barony and it'll show you the whole lot. So we've just hit Rathdown there and nothing else. We've no county, no poor law union, just the barony, and no civil parish, and no search. And it's shown us everything, and it's grouped them by civil parish and given us a summary of the towns and townlands. But if you hit the show item, it'll expand that and show you them. So there we've done Kilgobbin, and you'll see the townlands in Kilgobbin, and step aside the town. And you can also combine all this, so then we want all the towns or townland with Ard anywhere in them. in County Wicklow, and we know, again, this might be a birth cert or a death cert that was difficult to read, so you had, well, the Poor Law Union at the top of the cert said Shillelagh, and we can read that part of the place name has Ard in it. And there are all the places, you can see Ard and the Boy, but you could actually probably eliminate, does it begin with Ard or does it include Ard or end with Ard? You could probably guess, eliminate one or other of those pretty quickly. There's also another option in the Townland Explorer where you can hit towns only. So here I've just hit Poor Law Union, Clonakilty, and I've hit towns only, and it just leaves out all the townlands to make it easier to see. And it's just a quick way of seeing all the towns in a particular Poor Law Union or barony or county. Any one of these at the top. There's some oddities in here in townlands, or not townlands, in locations. There's lots of duplicate names. Ballymoors, there's loads of Ballymoors, as you'd expect. Anything deriving from, with Bally in it, or Ballina in it. There's 50 townlands named Newtown. There's about 10 towns and townlands called Black Rock or Black Space Rock. There's also duplicate townlands within counties. So there's 3 Kilbrides in County Wexford. So you have to know, I found a Kilbride, is that the one I actually want? And the only way you can tell is a civil parish in Barony. There's also duplicate civil parishes. So there's a couple of Kilcommon in Mayo, there's 2 Kilcommon in Wicklow. There's a number of parishes called Dysart and Clare, Kerry, Westmeath, Roscommon. And there's also multiple parishes named Dysart. There's 1 duplicate barony, and that's Bantry, Wexford and Cork. But that's not so much of a problem. The other type of oddity is townlands aren't all neatly within civil parishes and baronies, or even counties. In that, for example, my townland, there's a disclaimer there at the bottom, oh, it's seeable, is split between Rathdown and Dublin baronies. It's actually listed twice in the Townland Index, even though it's one townland. It's actually the little bit down near Donnybrook Bus Garage. Minmore Townland in Wicklow is split between 3 civil parishes and has 3 entries on the index. So again, if you typed in Minmore, you'd think there was 3 Minmores. There's actually 1, it's just split across parishes. There's a link I'll mention later on which helps you sort these out. And for that reason, the Townland database has more records than Loganum, which is the place name database. That's one of the links I give, because it's particularly good. I'm not sure who runs it. I think it's
Place Names Commission.
College.
It's a Place Names Commission deciding the names, I think,
Yeah.
but it's the
Because the equivalent to Irish names and everything. They have come up with a total of 61,000 townlands and 792 towns, which gives you 61,000. And because they amalgamate those, if you look at Minmore on their database, it tells you, gives you a single entry with 3 civil parishes, not like the Townland Index. And that's just to say, there's 2 townlands called Roebuck in County Dublin, the other one is not the one I'm referring to here. The other listings in the Townland book, Townland Index book, are for civil parishes and for baronies. So there you'll see how Crosspatrick civil parish is in Wexford and Wicklow. And you'll see that by all these brackets and things. It's trying to suggest it's in both. It's in 3 different baronies, 2 different counties, and 2 different poor law unions. Baronies, there's a couple of baronies that are split between counties, but they're actually listed for some reason separately. So Rathdown, which is Dublin down into North Wicklow, is listed twice. They're sometimes referred to as half baronies. There's a couple of others like that, 4 and 4th. I think 4 is Westmeath.
Yes.
And this is the last Townland search option, which you can actually use to work around some of these oddities. And it's a little bit techy, but if you have some sort of a search that goes across counties or goes across baronies or goes across other things, other land divisions, you can exploit it And it's wildcards everywhere, except for the county. It's wildcards everywhere. So I've used our King TN thing again, and the barony of Rath. I mean, we don't know what that's going to come up with, but it's gives you these. You have to use at least 2 fields on here, but you can use a star in one of the fields as a cheat. And there's another option here. The cross Patrick that we came across earlier, that's what you can do is don't select a county, sort by county, put star in the Townland option, and do cross pat like we don't know how to spell it. And you'll see that we've Wexford and Wicklow and all the townlands that are in that civil parish across 2 counties. And you can use all sorts of combinations of those to get the kind of searches that you wouldn't get just with a place name, with a townland name. There's one other option on this, and that's the area option. And when you click that, it ignores the townland. So I've just done Rathdown, and you see all the civil parishes, barony we know, and all the counties. So there we have, there's more down below that. So they're all the civil parishes that are in Rathdown in either county, sorted by county. I've added, some of the books do this and some of the references do this, but I've expanded on it. To distinguish between the duplicate parishes, I put something in brackets after it. Usually the barony, sometimes the town. All these will appear in any of those townland searches, so you can tell that there's something going on. So there's 2 inches, civil parishes named Inch in County Wexford. And one of them, I don't know how you pronounce that, Shellamere? That one is near Gorey, and that one is down between Wellington Bridge and Folksmills. But they're separate parishes. But that's how you can tell, when you see Inch and then something else. Similarly, that's actually 2 Dyserts in Kerry, because one of them is that they spread across different poor law unions, so it appears 4 times. And you can't see this. You can see 2 of them. There's 4 St Mary's in County Wexford, civil parishes called St Mary's, and they're in different towns, so they're easy to tell apart. So there's New Ross, Wexford Town, Newtown Barry, and Enniscorthy, I think it is.
Yeah. Yes.
But
yes.
again, they have something in brackets after them, so you can tell them apart. Next up, I hope I'm not going too fast. Civil registration district values. This is based very much on the Townland Index again, because the registration districts, there's a lot of information on there about the terminology. The registration districts are based on the poor law unions. So you can reference those from the Townland database. So the different kinds of search options on that is, you can county, or if you know the name of the registration district, or you can do a search. So there we just hit Dublin, Rathdown. They're the sub-districts or dispensary districts as they're known better. And that's the kind of thing you see. So there's some summary stuff up there, it's population and area. They're the towns that are within that civil registration district. They're the dispensary districts as they were in 1865, so it's the 2nd year of civil registration. And if you can zoom in a lot more on the map, that gives you the location. So if you were looking for somebody in, that's just north of Bray actually, that B1, Bray and Rathmike. Oh sorry, that's still part of Rathdown. So you can narrow down, when you look at records, you can get an idea. On a birth record it'll have Rathdown and it'll have one of these. And you can get an idea of an area that was involved in that birth. That's the list of those. There's also, if the dispensary districts changed, which happens a lot around Dublin because the population was getting bigger, that's a revised list from the 1880s. They're not mapped. They're the adjacent districts, so if you don't find whoever you're looking for in Rathdown, that's where you extend your search. Dublin South up there at 1, Naas and Rathdrum is down here somewhere, there. The other option is just to hit the registration district, and there I'm going to hit Parsonstown. And you get the same sort of screen, dispensary districts, a lot more adjacent districts, which you can see behind that. And then you click, if you click on, this works on any of them, the list of civil parishes down on the left, and I've clicked Burr, and it shows you all of the townlands and towns that are within that civil parish. So you can go off and look for a townland on that screen that apply to this district. You can also do a search. So Newport, there's a district called Newport, and there's a dispensary district or sub-district in Nenagh called Newport, and it'll give you both. So that would be if you had a birth cert or something that was very difficult to read and you weren't quite sure which one it referred to, you could get in that way. You'll see notes on some of the districts. There's an example of it, that the district was dissolved and everything after that would appear in a different district, in this case Westport, which is that one. The dispensary districts or sub-districts, there's a good reference for that. I don't think anybody has it online, but you can buy a copy. It used to be supplied by Enniclan Archive CD Books, but they're now part of EPIC, Irish Family History Centre. I don't know how much it is, it's a digital download, but that's the kind of details you see. So there's Rosscray, that's one of the sub-districts. And then you see all the townlands, and they're broken down by barony and parish. And it'll go on like that and work through all the dispensary districts for Rosscray. So you can see, for example, say you could see that the sub-district was Borris and Ossory, and you had a particular townland, again, that was difficult to read on a search. You could browse through the list of townlands and see if you can find a good match. Because you have the sub-district and you have the district, you have something to match up to. Some kinks in the townlands and the boundaries. There's some differences you may have already seen with the tithe records and the Townland Index or Griffiths or the census. And some of the townlands move civil parishes. So that's just two examples. Ballywatram and Gilsburg are now in Bray civil parish, and as they were for Griffiths and the census and everything else, but they're in Powerscourt on the tithe record. So they sort of shifted the boundaries around there somewhere. And that's just an explanation of that. And there's one county border at least to change. Part of Ballymore Eustace, a bit out of focus. Ballymore Eustace, that's a detached part of Dublin that's listed in 1837. Sorry, that's wrong. That should be later transferred to County Kildare. That's backwards. Listed in County Dublin and Lewis, later transferred to Kildare. So there it is, County Dublin, even though it's down there. There's a few others. I'm going to skip quickly through these. That's Townlands, and its particular example south-west of Coleraine, and it appears it's after the 1851 index. The Northern Ireland Place Name Project shows it in Carrick civil parish, whereas the Townland Index shows it in Tamlath Finlagan. This guy. And the 1831 census agreed with that. So there was some moving around even after the Townland Index. And there was also this. I have a link to the alterations due to the Local Government Act in 1898. Most of them seem to be around towns that were straddled county borders. So Bray, Drogheda, Balladreen, places like that were a bit in one county, a bit in another county. They rationalised that. Drogheda is another one. They're all links. That's almost invisible. That's the place name database that we're talking about. That's the equivalent for Northern Ireland. Our place name database covers Northern Ireland quite well, but they go into a couple more details. That site is very handy. There's a link that will be in the blog where you can download, or you can view, you can't download, the 1861 and the 1871 Townland Index, like the book I showed you at the beginning. The 1901 Townland Index, so it would be after the Local Government Act, is free on the IGRS website. And there's also browsable images of the Townland Index and indexes, various versions, on Find My Past, if you have access to where to look. Probably a vital resource, I think, and I end up looking at it all the time, is this guide, the Topographical Dictionary. I keep thinking that should say Directory, but it is Dictionary of Ireland 1837 by Samuel Lewis. And that's where it is, it's free on Library Ireland. He also did ones for England, Wales and Scotland. Here are some Poor Law Union Civil Registration District maps. So it's boundaries on top of the dot locations that I had, the marker locations I had. So that one's on Claire Santry's page on the Irish Genealogy Toolkit. There's a nice map. Find My Past have a slightly bigger one, and it kind of indicates when there's bits of poor law registration districts in other counties. And then Brian, hiding up there somewhere, has a couple of layers for Dublin. So you have the South Dublin, Rathdown, and they overlay, so you can zoom in and out, or sorry, you can cross-fade between, just about see the fader down there. You can cross-fade between a modern OpenStreetMap and the layers. And similarly for the dispensary districts, or registrar's districts, which is the proper name. Maps. That's just a list of the maps. And that's what you get when you expand on there. That's the first map that started me off on this, was the Tom's 1848. And that's a list of all what you see when you go into the Dublin maps. They're mostly Dublin City, but there's a little bit of in what they call environs of Dublin as well, so they stretch out to a little bit like Sandymount and little bits down the coast and up the coast. That's the 1848. That original map is smaller than A4, but it's incredibly detailed. Like, as you can see, that's just a tiny cut extract of the middle. But they're very detailed, and it's nice and crisp and clear, and you can read even the little lanes. 1610, that's the earliest. Some great spellings on this. St. Owen's Church. St. Owen's. St. Werburgh's Church. Werburgh's. And there's Woodkey. That's from Watson's Almanac 1783. And it's not a good quality as the Tom's 1848 map, but it's readable. So you've Hammond Lane and all the rest of it. And I think that indicates a river. Looks like it does.
Yeah, there is a little river that comes down there.
Yeah.
There is.
There's a later map. And they started colouring them in here. Some of these are hand coloured in. It's Bacon. They're the most recent ones. The reason I have circa is they have a date code on the bottom right, which has a date published printed. But some of the survey details disagree with each other. The Mount Merion, I know the build-up of Mount Merion, and they fit that. But there's other details around Ringsend that are incorrect. So there's also an inset of Dún Laoghaire on that. It's a nice little map. County Dublin maps. I'm just going to fly through these. 37. That's a very big Tom's directory. That's like half the table here. I've done it in 2 parts. That's from a directory on Dún Laoghaire, which we'll mention in a minute. And they're the Ireland maps. Again, they're all they work in the same sort of way. They don't all have exactly the same interface. Most of them are Google, but the other interface you wouldn't even notice was anything different. That's the oldest map. There's John Speed, there's one of Ireland, and there's one of each of the provinces. There's great spellings on there. You'll have great fun reading around like Fingal with a Y. And there's one interesting oddity on this. That's Dublin, up there, and you'll see the town of Wicklow is in Dublin. And that's the county of Carlow. And that's Wexford. Wicklow had only been formed, I think, 1605. This map hadn't caught up, even though it's 1610. So Arklow was in Carlow at that stage. But soon afterwards, there would have been, you would see Wicklow on the maps. And here's more, that's 37, that's a nice crisp map of Ireland. There's also the oh yeah, there's lots of churches marked on that one. There's also, the Ireland section includes anything that's not Dublin, so it's Cork and Belfast and things on there as well. And that's 67 of Ireland. There's some of there's folds and fades in some of these maps, so you get little bits that don't look like they're in focus. Lewis maps. This is to go with the Directory. It's kind of hidden behind here, the Samuel Lewis Ireland. The Directory is in three volumes. The first 2 volumes are all the towns and parishes and cities. The third part is little maps. So you can click on which county you want, or you can click on the map and it'll show you something like that. And they're quite detailed little county maps, plenty of roads and towns and all the rest of it. But it's 1837, so they're handy to see. And the little indications of mountains and all the rest of it. Going back a bit further, with Taylor and Skinner, it's called the Road Maps of Ireland, or Maps of the Roads of Ireland. They are laid out a bit strangely. You see the compass rose there is pointing down, because north is to the bottom, and it's designed to be read like a GPS on your phone. So you look at the map and you're starting in Dublin and you're going to Wexford. You want Dublin here and you're moving that way. It's like you would right these days. And they're the places that are mentioned on the map. And then I have corrected them and put them on a Google map so you can see, well, this is the area it represents. Only it's the wrong way around. And there's Wexford. Sorry, Wexford is in here somewhere. Here's Ferry Carrick. So that's Wexford, probably up in behind there. I think that's it there. Behind that thumbnail. But they show houses, Birch Grove, New Ross Road, that means a road under construction. There's Tagmon, road to New Ross. They show details on the houses and junctions and all the rest of it. There's a whole load of routes in this map. There's lots of routes in this map, and there are maps that include this. So you see various other places that include the same map. And there's also at the bottom roads. All the roads are given numbers, and you can see that they're the roads that are mentioned on the map. I don't think you can see any of them there, but you could follow. If you find one of the road numbers on the map there, you can click that and jump to that section of the map. The other option with these is you can follow the full route. Sorry, I've done that over here. I've selected route as the option, and it's given me all the routes which mention TAGH, which are all Tagmon and Wexford. And it's given me, there's route 387, which is Dublin to Tagmon, and it has 4 maps. It's a distance of 71 Irish miles, and there's your statute miles and kilometre, and they're the 4 different maps that are involved. So you would go through 4 consecutive pages, so you'd start in Dublin, the next page, next page, next page, as you were driving along. I don't know how long it would have taken them, but I would imagine it would have taken a couple of days. And that's what you see with the routes, so that's each step of the route that you're on. And then that brings you to the next one. So there you get the map. There's the Dublin one again. It'll be upside down. There's the rows, the compass rows, and you can see Donnybrook, Blackrock, Dublin. So you're going out down the coast. There's Stillorgan Church, St Bridget's, and you see various houses: Temple Carrig, Delgany, and that's where we are at this step of the route, and that's where the next step would bring us, and that's where the next step would bring us, and so on. Map links. Use that all the time. A couple of times a day at least, and they moved it from OSI website to GeoHive, and unfortunately dropped some nice overlays at the same time, and made it awkward to link to things. But actually, that's Minmore, the townland we were talking about earlier. You can see it's split between the green, are civil parishes, red are townlands. And yellows are baronies. If there were baronies in there, there'd be yellow boundaries. There are some parts, most of them seem to be in northern counties, where they reverse the colour scheme for some reason, and the townland borders are in green, and the civil parishes border are in red. I have no idea why, unless somebody ran out of ink or something. There's also the PR, oh sorry, that's the different layers you can pick. That's the nice colour one, and it's the first edition. That version covers all of Ireland. Almost all. There's a few little dropouts, but most of it covers all of Ireland, including the north. PRONI Historic Maps only covers the north, but has more historic layers. They don't seem to stray across the border at all, but there's a lot more layers. You can hit parish and townland borders and points of interest like churches and that. This is Brian's, some of Brian's maps. Definitely if you have Dublin and you like maps, you get lost in there for a couple of days. I like the John Rock maps. I have a John Rock map, but it's huge. It's great fun scanning. This one's more detailed. That's my Townland. Roebuck, Clonskee, the Dodder, and I think that's Packhorse Bridge. It's Pettigrew and Oulton, sometimes spelled with an I instead of a Y. That's a nice crisp map of Dublin 1850, and that's one of the overlays. That's civil parishes. There's a label in there somewhere. And there's map links. The surprising one is probably the French National Library. They have a great collection of John Rock maps of Dublin and environs. South County Dublin has a couple of, libraries, has a couple of maps of South Dublin. They also had a layer thing which included rock maps, but it's not working right now. And of course the Down Survey, Trinity College, has some lovely maps, and probably the first ones that Ireland looked like it actually looks. A lot of the earlier maps, Donegal looks a bit weird, and some of the peninsulas down in Kerry are a bit misshapen and big or small. And there's some other links, map code, there's nice ones of Ireland and nice ones of Dublin. And there's a big downloadable image on Wikipedia. And there's map, this one. That's all over the world, but it's got some nice maps. Directories. Dublin, best represented starting in the 1750s. That's just Tom's Directories to show that they got bigger, not just in format, but also in number of pages. So that's the first Tom's and the centenary edition in 45, and you can see they get bigger all the time. That one is like a couple more than a kilo. That's Alexander Thom. He was born in Scotland, and he ran, there was a printing company, there was stationers, they did all kinds of things. There's the various directories, and there's Tom's. It was online for a while, but they took it down. Probably privacy laws and GDPR and all the rest of it, got rid of it. There's other directories specialising in particular areas, so there's Guy's in Cork, and there's Bassett's in Limerick, etc. And then there's the All Ireland ones. There are links. You can view images of both of those, of Piggott's 1820, I think it's the 24 edition on Brian Hay's website, and Slater's 1845. And there'll be a listing for towns. You won't find people, you won't find farmers, and you won't find people outside towns. It'll be trades. So there's no labourers or anything like that in. That's just a summary of the directories that I have. And here's one for Black Rock. There's two different sections. These are transcripts from Tom's. There's the description, and then there's the street listings. So there's the description. You can view these, you can read that online. That's just a map from about the same time showing it. And that's what the street listings look like. At that time you'll see some of them have street numbers and some of them don't. So you'll also have junctions, which is very handy for, well now that one doesn't have street numbers, so it makes it kind of difficult. But it'll give you the layout of the street. If you had that in this street, which you might have further down, you'd be able to tell that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ran up to the junction with such a street, and be able to figure out, oh, it was the 5th building before that junction, or whatever. And you will also see separate numbers for terraces. That happen quite a bit. So even though it's on I think it's George's Place and Avenue. So that terrace is on that street. Pettigrew and Alton, they started, I believe, in around 1834, and that's the first street listing that I know of for Dublin City. The index is a little bit fiddly, so you pick the name you want, and you'll see this number after the name. Now, it's just a name, you don't have anything else, you can't tell them apart. You go to the street listings and you'll see those numbers. They're actually column numbers. So you see, well, 14 is the second half of Ainger Street. So that's the number you would see on somebody on Ainger Street. If you went back here, you would see 14 is column number, not page number. So it's a pretty strange indexing system, which they revised very quickly. That's what the details look like for the 1840 edition. Much better, much more detail. You also get some extra stuff at the top. So Husbands Row ran from Ainger. Was it Ainger Street? Amiens Street.
Amiens Street, yeah.
To Common Street. And the other item with that is that it's usually 7 was the Ainger Street end and 16 was the opposite end, but that's not always the case because you will see a little bit more detail. Also, you'll see, sorry, the civil parish, the Thomas Mitchin, Nicholas without is the civil parish, and that's the electoral district, I think. The indexes with these are with 1840 is much better. So there you have surnames, so you just hit the surname you want, and it gives you the trade and the address. So you don't even need to look at the street index unless you want to see who's his neighbour. And the same with the trades. There's no trade index in the 1834, but there is in the 40. So you want the bakers, and you'll see all the bakers, and you have the name and the street and the address. So again, much more detail, and it's, I think, much more usable. Watson's, going back, this is a much older directory. There's also a map and a street index to go with this. That's what it looks like. This was a pain. It wouldn't OCR. It wouldn't automatic character recognition. You know, to translate it into something you could actually search. It wouldn't do it very well. Partly because there's funny letters. So that street, that's actually a single character. The ST is a single character, and FIs are a single character. They're a single block of lead. So it doesn't know how to translate a lot of those. So you end up doing a lot of corrections. But you can browse by surname. So you fit S, Sweeney, and there are all the Sweeneys, occupation, street number, and street. Similarly with occupations, so again we're going with the bakers, and there are all the bakers, and where they are, and that'll bring you to the image, the street, the page that it's actually on, so you can see it for yourself. So that's page the 5th entry on line 15. It'll show that at the top of the screen to help you. And similarly with the street, you can go Bridge Street, and the directory doesn't have a street index, but this is makes one up. Not makes one, creates one. So there's the street, Bridge Street, and there's the numbers. So you get everybody, so even though they're scattered throughout the directory, we can group them all together. You can see what type of business. Some of the streets you can see, there's a lot of silk weavers, or there's a lot of skinners and tanners and all the rest of it. Here's the Kingstown directory. It's quite short, so you can actually browse through it image by image. That's the front of it. It was by auctioneers. I've forgotten where they are, where they were located, but it's listed by street, and you can dive into the page to see what's going on the street. So if we go in, there's the beginning of it, Adelaide Road, and there's the list of people. And you can browse through it. You can also browse through the whole thing, there's advertising and all the rest of it. Next up, again, this was the same directory, the 1848, which is the one I started with. I actually got it from a guy called James Fenning, who's now deceased. And it was an 1848 Toms, which had that beautiful map, the 1848 map. But one of the things was, it has an Ecclesiastical Directory. Now this is the Catholic one, there's also ones for other denominations. But it's all the priests and curates, parish priests and curates, which can be handy if you have a letter or a baptism cert that somebody's had for years and there's no indication of a parish on it, but you know what the priest was. You can dive in and say, oh well, Andrew O'Connell was St. Michael and John's, or you find one of the curates maybe. When it says in the country, it just means outside the city, because the Diocese of Dublin doesn't just cover Dublin. Based on this, I referred back to Tom's and trying to expand out, because sorry, that's from 1848, so civil registration hadn't started. So knowing more details about the parishes could be handy. So that's what Topographical Directory, the Samuel Lewis that I mentioned earlier, that's actually from the second edition, but the 1837 one is online free. And you see for each of the parishes and towns, you get a good description of what's in the parish, the major landowners, the big houses, the resources, the quality of the land, if there are quarries, things like that. But there's also a bit at the end, and it has Roman Catholic divisions. This parish forms the head of a district, including also parts of the parish, that means civil parishes, of Donnybrook, Kill, Monkstown, Rathfarnham, Sluggan and Taney. So we know which civil parishes are now involved in Blackrock, in Booterstown. And it also says there are chapels at Blackrock and Dundrum also. So there's a chapel in Booterstown and Blackrock and Dundrum. Parishes were much bigger then. The parish went from Booterstown, Blackrock, Dundrum was all one big parish. A second source is this. I found this in Google Books and I haven't been able to find it again. It's 1838, so it's the same sort of time frame, and it gives the same sort of details. But there's a little number here, so here you have James Callanan, and that's they call it parishes, but it's parish unions. They would usually just be called one now, but anyways, Clontarf, Coolock, Ballymun, and it's a 13. And here we have P.J. Doyle, Booterstown, 17. And at the end, you can't quite see it, there is Booterstown in there somewhere. But there for 13, you see number 13, and it has chapels in Dublin, Clontarf, Coolock, Ballymun. So that's where the chapels are for this parish. And similarly for Booterstown in there somewhere, it has Rock and Dundrum. Rock obviously being somebody's abbreviation for Blackrock. So based on these and the directory, that's what I came up with. So there's your list of dioceses and there's a map, you can click on that as well. And it's transcribed all of those, and if you click that, it shows you the relevant page so you can see all the parish priests. If you click any of these, you see the view parish details. That's the kind of thing you get, based on all the previous information you have, along with some big searches of the Ordnance Survey. Now there's a lot of detail there, so I'll break it up. That's at the top, with the parish and the diocese. Alternate names, there's usually, often there's a union of this parish and that parish. Sometimes the union will be the civil parishes, sometimes it will be the name of the townland the chapel's in. I added that at the last minute. I literally just finished this project when the NLI, the project leader from the National Library, contacted me and asked for permission to use a link. And I was able to put in links to the films directly from their project online. But I have the film number and the start date, so there's only baptisms listed for that parish starting on that date. And you click on that and jump straight to the NLI site for that parish. They're the civil parishes that were linked based on all the evidence of the Lewis entries. And you'll see some of them you'll have also linked. So that parish is linked to Hugginstown as well as our parish, which is Ballyhale, Knockover. And you see, a lot of parishes are like that, to be linked to other parishes. That's what the map section looks like. So there are all the chapels and the different colour markers used for each. And that's where they are on a modern map, or where they may not still exist. And you can click on there and dive straight into a Google map at that location. And these used to link to the OSI site, but they stopped it and now use GeoHive. They're ITM coordinates, which is Irish Transfer Mercator. And you can use them, you can paste them into GeoHive and get straight to that location and see the 1830s first edition OSI map with that chapel marked on it. Sorry, I'm calling them chapels because Lewis calls them chapels, the Catholic. If you see chapel on an OSI map, it's Catholic. If you see church, it's Church of Ireland. There's also a bit at the bottom right which says they're the Catholic parishes nearby and how far away they are. So if you want to extend your search, you can use that. And there is also, you'll see this sometimes, these are civil parishes, but there's no specific reference to which Catholic parish they're in. So they're nearby. So if you had somebody living in one of those, you might want to look at Ballyhale. Oh, sorry, with these, all that previous information, this page, that's largely done for Church of Ireland as well. Except the parishes are a lot simpler most of the time. They're not all simple. I'll just skip through this because you can pick a civil parish, county, and dive straight in. So you can just go straight into any of those. If we had Booterstown there, we're searching Booterstown civil parish. What is it linked to? And it'll show the Catholic parish of Booterstown. If you know the diocese, you can click straight in on the parish and get to the same screen. And there's also a search by parish or browse. Search. Yeah, so we hit Bridge, and you've got Banbridge, Crossbridge, Johnson's Bridge, Ladies Bridge, Cork. And there's also a browse, so you could just hit all the parishes in Dublin, listed alphabetically, what chapels are involved, which civil parishes and baronies are involved, and that'll jump you straight into the parish details with the map. And again, also that's for Church of Ireland. This is only available for Catholic parishes. You can see all of it, but basically there's a map and you drop the pointer at the location. You might know, oh, it's near Ballycanoe or it's near Camolan or wherever, and you drop the pointer on and you hit search, which is down there, and you say your search radius, and that's the kind of results you get. And the basis of it is that you might officially be in one parish, but you'll be very close to a chapel in another parish. So maybe that's where you actually went, or got married, or whatever, and pretended you were, or not pretended, but for convenience, that might be the one you actually went, attended. So the red ones are all parish Camolan, green ones are Monagere, etc. So you see where the different parishes were laid out. There's two markers for, oh no, that's Monagere. H is Ballygarrett, sorry. And they're the name of the churches. Or sorry, it's often the location rather than the name of the church. This is the one thing that works on mobile. Not the one thing, it's the one thing that is only available on mobile that isn't on the desktop. You hit that, parish maps and churches, and then there's hidden underneath there, there's the Church of Ireland one. And you pick the diocese. You'd have to already know the diocese and the parish. So I pick Bray, Dublin Archdiocese, Bray, and it gives you the chapels. If you click on any of those, it gives you the details and coordinates, but there's also that one, Google Map directions. If you do that, you will get a security question usually, are you sure you want to allow this application to access Google Maps? And I'll give you directions from where you are currently sitting to that chapel, or where that chapel used to be. So that was me sitting at home saying, that's how we get to Kilmechanic. I know the churches anyway, so. be a little bit cautious with directions on Google Maps. They can be a bit strange sometimes, but these are by coordinates, so the end point should be right, but make sure it doesn't direct you somewhere silly. Am I
5 minutes.
tight for time here?
About 5 minutes, okay.
Street indexes, a couple of these I have on mostly 34 up to about 1904, and what you can do is you can use to find where a street was located, and there's a big list of them. So for example, Back Lane, which is Taylor's Hall, you can see Nicholas Street, and underneath there is Nicholas Street is off, it must be behind that, is off High Street. So you know it runs between, that's where it's located, and you can use this. That's the sort of detail it shows. So you might have to go another layer down in each case. So Loftus Lane off Riders Row, you might then want to look up Riders Row to see what that's off, and you work out a daisy chain of what streets are off which, and you get an idea where it is. But you can also see a common thing for Dublin. There's 3 John Streets, 3 different John Streets. There's a couple of different Johnson's Courts. There's actually, where is it? There's a couple of different Love Lanes, which I didn't notice before. And there's also a place, you can barely just see it there, called Lucky Hall, which I hadn't heard of before. But there's a couple of different versions of that. That's 1879, there's a few versions of that. Next up is Directory Database. Historic directories. I collaborated with a guy called Joe Buggy on this. He built up the list and I maintain it and put it online. So you can search by directory name or detail, you know, something included in the title of the directory, or by county or all Ireland, and by date range. So it's narrowed down like that. And that's the kind of result. That's a few different results pasted together. So you'll see 1812 is on Irish Family History Centre. That's Epic, the place on the Liffey. But it's also, you have to pay for that. It's a CD and a download. And there's 1848, and that's an ebook, and it's free. There's no $sign. South Dublin Library. And then there's 1850. I can't read what that is. I think it's Find My Past transcripts, and you pay for it. There's a lot of them are free though, including some of mine. And here's the directory links. There's a good Dublin City Street Index for 62. It's actually Tom's on Library Ireland. Faucher Road, John Hayes. He has images of 1846, that's Ireland, so it has all the cities, and a lot of the larger towns. So it doesn't have all the towns, but it has a lot of them. Again, you won't find labourers or anything, farmers or anything like that in it. There's the Pickett's 1824, it's the same idea. So you basically look at the index and you say, I want to see Bray or whatever, and there'll be images of that that you can scroll through, and they're usually description of the place, and then lists by trade. There'll be the gentry and clergy at the top, and then lists by different trades underneath that. That's particularly good. Lennon Wiley, it's Mary Lennon, I think is her name. It's really Ulster. But there's some other resources on it as well. There's a 1913 telephone directory, which has Belfast, Dublin and Cork. And there's a 1914-15 motor directory, so there's registrations and names, and I think address. And there's also on Google Books, there's a Tom's Directory 1850. This link is in the blog post because it's ridiculously long. That's well worth a look to see the sort of content. It's not just, Tom's doesn't just have a street index or a list of names. There's a lot of other things. There's Ecclesiastical, there's solicitors, there's doctors, there's all these things, and they all had Dublin addresses, or they're listed, even though they're all over the country, they're listed, it'll say where they are. Solicitors had to have a Dublin address, I think, so you usually see Dublin and Monaghan or whatever. I have an index of that. If you do download, you can view that on Google Books, and you can also download it as a PDF. Although you can't search by text if you download it. But I have an index, so if you want to dive into the Catholic directory or the county directory to see workhouse masters and matrons and things, I have an index. You can let me know and I'll figure that I can send it on to you. I don't know, Can I keep going?
A couple more minutes.
Tie the plotlands. This is, sorry, I should say, this is on the National Archives. There's also a copy of the transcripts on the Family Search website, but they transcribed the data, and I don't think they understood, at least, sorry, some of them at least, didn't have a perfect view of land divisions, because they got a couple of things mixed up, quite a few things mixed up. And there's a lot of locations relating to diocese and county. I think what they did was they looked at the first page and they saw, oh, that says Meath, County Meath, it's the Diocese of Meath. Similarly with Dublin. Some of the other mistakes I can't quite figure out, but they also seem to have missed a lot of they're in alphabetical order. So they missed, if there's, well, the example, one of them, Bray, County Wicklow, is mixed up with Brannockstown in County Kildare. So obviously somebody didn't spot the B-R-A-N switching to B-R-A-Y, even though there's a page that has the new name and the beginning of a book and the end of a book, because they're all filmed except for one chunk. Booterstown is listed under County Mayo, and I'll show you a screenshot of that later. I can't see why they did that either. The parish of All Saints appears under County Dublin. I knew from the beginning that was actually in Donegal. And again, I can't see why they did that, unless the previous parish maybe was County Dublin. There's a tool called the Tide Location Reference Database, and you can, there's two modes to start with. You can have Tide Parish, which is really what the National Archives of Ireland have defined it as, and on the right is Civil Parish. So this is what it actually is. This is what it's called on the National Archives site. Now you can search as well, but there's our All Saints. It's listed under Dublin on the NII, and there's my notes, it's actually in Donegal, and that's a flag to say it's a location error, and that's the actual parish, and that'll link you directly to it. It just means you ignore that it says Dublin and treat it as Donegal. There's Ball, that's parish in the town and parish in County Mayo, same sort of idea. You'll also see this a couple of times. Palmerstown, there's two parishes called Palmerstown, Palmerston, and they're mixed up. They didn't catch the transition on that. And if you see a little camera icon, that means it jumps you into the section of it that switches from one to the other of the actual images. I'll show you that in a bit. And there's another one of those. Here's more examples. I've done this is the Kilcommon parish that we mentioned earlier that duplicates. So they've Kilcommon, Kilcoman, Wicklow, and there's more than one parish with that name, but they've managed to merge them all together. So you can browse the images by hitting the little camera icon on that. And you get a similar problem in Mayo. They've mixed up the different parishes. You can then switch to the other way around. So we now have several parishes. So the first one would be, I'm looking at the NII website, which parish am I actually looking at? And this would be the reverse. I'm looking for a particular parish in a particular county. What is it listed as? So in this case, I want to see, oh well, the first one actually is a different example. Baldoyle. You go looking for Baldoyle, you won't find it, because it's Tide 3. Some parishes are partially Tide 3, and I'll mention that there. But there's no link, and there won't be a link, and you'll find that in Lewis, it'll mention that. Some of those, I don't think Baldoyle is an example of it. Some of those are locations of abbeys. For some reason, I don't know what the historical reason for that is, but they appear not to be tideable. And there's some where the local landlord seems to have paid all the tithe fees, so the locals don't seem to have paid anything. And there's our Booterstown example. And it's listed under Mayo, and there's a camera icon. You see it and the location error. There's our Booterstown. Now I can't see how that says Mayo. I mean, Booterstown I can see. You can tell by the Townlands in it anyway. This is the browse tool that you see if you hit any of the camera icons. You'll see this sort of idea. So you do the next page, you'll start to see the tithe details. or the declaration, or these are the people that have been assigned to carry out a tithe survey and certify this, that and the other. And that's where you'll see the date. And there's the date actually, sorry, as well, 1826. That's sometimes wrong on the transcripts. But you can skip around batches of pages looking for the next one. And basically what you do is you copy that. You call up if you want to start browsing, if you're suspicious about a parish or a transcript, you can copy the image URL and paste it into this tool. When you hit reset, it'll give you an option. That's on the next screen actually. That's what you look, if you get into that tool, that's what you'll see. And you paste an image from the NLI website, which is behind there, and it'll bring it up. So there's the point. That's Monkstown. Something Monkstown Parish, I've jumped into there. That's just some details of the tithes. Some of the parishes were tithe free, so there's no returns. Some of them, the Church of Ireland parish unions, sometimes the tithes are listed together. So you mightn't find, so Finglas and Artane are listed together. The parish around Rathdrum is the same. And some of the tithe records are just correspondence and declarations. There's no actual list of the occupants. So you won't find, the only names you'll find are the people who were responsible for it. And some of them have interesting little things like maps. You have to just browse through the images and look for them.
Okay, Shane. Before we get choked out, we need to wrap it up.
Sorry?
We need to wrap it up, sir. Very soon. We need to finish up. Okay.
Sorry, say again?
So we need to finish up.
Oh, yeah. So will I finish up?
Yeah, if you would.
Yeah. Just 2 slides on this. Basically, this is based on Griffiths, and it allows for surname variations. Tell you which counties. So most of the surnames you probably already guess where they come from. So there's most Roaches in Cork. But the part that was surprising about this was I did a cross-reference. So now I spelled Dillon wrong deliberately there because it's looking for variations on it. This worked for a lot, the 2 surnames, so I'm looking for Dillon and Roach. This worked for a lot of my ancestors. My Dillon and Roach couple came from Hackettstown. There's a few of the others. Now I've narrowed it down by county, so I'm sort of cheating a little bit there. But the name combination thing worked very well for quite a few of my ancestors. One of them was unique in Ireland. It was just a combination in the same parish. There's one near Bray. So it can be worth a go. It's probably hit and miss. And if you've common first names, if you've common names, like if you're looking for a very common surname, you probably would get misled on it. Or probably going in to something else that we go too far on.
Okay. Okay. So thank you very much.
I'll have to leave
I feel like the worst spoil sport in history because we have to be out of here. He'll be up.